Cleveland Browns should be starting Shedeur Sanders this upcoming season. There is nothing to gain from the Deshaun Watson experience except these last hope attempts that maybe some pennies would be worth it on a deal that has not.
There is a moment in this press conference that has been completely misread by nearly every single person who watched it. A reporter walks into that room with a question already loaded. Not a question designed to understand Shedeur Sanders. A question designed to produce something specific, a sound bite, a confession, a moment of public vulnerability that could be clipped, looped, and used as permanent evidence that the doubters were right all along. And Shedeur Sanders sat there, looked directly at the premise of that question, and dismantled it in real time. No anger, no raised voice, no defensiveness. Just a young man who knew exactly what was being attempted and refused to let it happen. What you are about to see broken down in this video is not just a press conference moment. It is a window into something the mainstream sports media conversation has completely and deliberately avoided. The calculated way language is used to frame young quarterbacks before they ever take a single NFL snap. And by the time this video is over, you are going to see that press conference in a way you have never seen it before. Before we go any further, drop your answer in the comments right now. Do you think Shedeur Sanders is the most mentally equipped young quarterback in the NFL today? Or do you still think the confidence is a problem at this level? Pick a side. Drop it right now. Because by the end of this video, your answer might change. And I want to see where you started.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
This is the truest quarterback competition in the NFL. What I mean by that is whoever performs best in training camp should be the week one.
The two routes, okay? Route one, he exceeds expectations and shows that he could be an NFL quarterback. Wonderful. The other route, which is the ends of the board, are, this guy.
Here is exactly what we are covering today. We are going to break down the full architecture of what the media set up in that room, the exact language they used and why they chose it, the 4 layers of Shedeur's response that almost nobody is talking about, the pattern that goes all the way back to before draft night, the silence of everyone else in that room, and 5 predictions about what comes next for Shedeur in Cleveland, predictions that are going to generate serious debate. Every single section of this video adds something new to the picture. So stay locked in from the beginning to the end, because the piece that ties everything together does not come until the final predictions. And trust me, you do not want to miss where this is going. Let us start with context, because context is everything here, and the mainstream coverage stripped it out entirely. Shedeur Sanders walked into this press conference in the early stages of his time working with a brand new coaching staff in Cleveland. Coach Ken Zampese and the rest of the staff had been working with him in the meeting room, on the field, and in the weight room. By all accounts, from everything he described in that room, the energy was different. The vibe was locked in. He was talking about coaches who pushed him every single day, about a new system, about the kind of genuine enthusiasm you only hear from someone who is fully bought in and actively building something meaningful. That is the Shedeur Sanders who walked into that press conference, a quarterback in growth mode, a quarterback who was describing real, tangible progress with real specificity, not talking points, not rehearsed answers, actual detail about what the work looks like day to day. And then the media, sitting across from that version of Shedeur Sanders, decided that what they needed from that room was not an honest picture of where he was. What they needed was a moment of public reckoning.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
What they needed was a headline, and they constructed the questions in that room specifically to manufacture one. This was not a casual availability. This was not a routine set of questions from reporters trying to understand a quarterback's development. The structure of what they asked Shedeur Sanders was engineered, and I want to be very precise about that word, engineered. Because what happened in that room did not happen by accident. The framing, the word choices, the sequencing of the questions, all of it was built around a single goal. Get Shedeur Sanders to validate a narrative that the media had already written for him. A narrative called the humbling. And if you do not understand why that matters, stay with me. Because by the time we get through section 3, you are going to see exactly how that word was deployed and why it was chosen above every other possible word the reporter could have used. The first trap came wrapped in something that sounded almost reasonable on the surface. It sounded like reflection. It sounded like an invitation for Shedeur to share his growth. The question gestured toward everything that happened in his draft process, the teams that passed on him, the public scrutiny, the long wait, and then asked him, essentially, when you look back on all of that, what stands out the most? Now read that question again. Really read it. Because what that question is actually doing has nothing to do with curiosity. It is not asking Shedeur to reflect on growth. It is not asking him to talk about what he learned. It is forcing him to stand in front of a camera and re-narrate the most painful chapter of his professional life for the consumption of an audience that the media fully intends to frame around their pre-existing verdict. It is reminding him, on record in public with cameras rolling, that there were people who did not want him. It is designed to reopen a wound. It is designed to see whether he bleeds in public. And the most uncomfortable part of it is that it is framed as a sincere question, which makes it almost impossible to call out without looking thin-skinned.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Shedeur Sanders responded with 3 words repeated 3 times. He said he was thankful, thankful, thankful 3 times. Let that sit with you for a moment because that is not an accident. He did not say he was angry. He did not say he was hurt. He did not say the process was unfair, even though there are serious, substantiated reasons to believe that significant parts of it were. He said he was thankful. And then he explained why in a way that completely dismantled the entire premise behind the question. He said his appreciation for things is different now. He said he does not have to chase anything anymore. He talked about having a great family, great people in his corner, and being in a position to inspire people who are watching his journey from the outside. He said he views everything, and he was explicit about that word, everything, as positive. And then he said he feels bulletproof. Bulletproof, that was the specific word he used. And I need you to hold on to it because we are going to come back to it. But the media was not finished because that answer did not produce the content they came into that room to get. So they tried again. And the second attempt was not even subtle. Here is the question they asked Shedeur Sanders in that press conference. And I want you to hear it with fresh ears because the casualness with which it was delivered is part of what makes it so revealing. The reporter looked at a young man who had just navigated one of the most publicly scrutinized draft processes in recent NFL history and asked him essentially, "Was last year a humbling experience for you, Shedeur?" After all and before they could even finish the sentence, Shedeur interrupted with 4 words. What does humbling mean? 4 words. That is all it took. And those 4 words told you everything you needed to know about where Shedeur Sanders is mentally right now. But let us talk about the word humbling itself because the choice of that word is not incidental. It is not neutral. It is not journalism. The word humbling carries a very specific implication. It implies that someone was previously too high. It implies that they needed to be brought down. It implies that the process of being lowered, the experience of being reduced, was ultimately good for them. And when a reporter uses that word to describe a young quarterback's rookie year in a press conference setting, they are not offering a neutral observation. They are issuing a verdict. They are saying, "You thought too highly of yourself. The NFL corrected that, and we want you to confirm that correction on record." And here is the thing that makes this particularly calculated. The word humbling sounds positive on the surface. It sounds like the reporter is acknowledging growth. It sounds like they are giving Shedeur credit for learning something. So if he pushes back on it, he risks looking like someone who cannot take constructive framing. If he accepts it, he has just cost the media's entire narrative about his first year. It is a trap with no obvious exit. Unless you are Shedeur Sanders, who found a third option nobody in that room was expecting. He simply refused to accept the premise of the word itself. He asked them to define it. He turned the question back on the room and forced everyone in it to sit with what that word was actually implying. That is not deflection. That is precision. That is a young man who has thought about language, about framing, about the way narratives get constructed, in a way that most 23-year-olds have not come close to. Now think about this for a second. When was the last time you saw a veteran quarterback with 10 years in the league, a couple of playoff runs, maybe a Super Bowl appearance, asked whether a difficult season was a humbling experience? Think about that. Think about whether that framing gets applied equally. Think about whether the same word gets deployed in the same way against every quarterback who goes through a hard year. Because the answer, if you are being honest with yourself, is no. And the question of why it does not get applied equally is the question that television is not willing to ask. But we are going to sit in it here, because that is the conversation that actually matters. What Shedeur Sanders delivered in that press conference was not just a good answer. It was not just a strong soundbite that his supporters could share on social media. It operated on 4 distinct levels simultaneously, and I want to walk through all 4 because the depth of it is being completely missed by the surface-level coverage. The first layer is the tactical layer. He refused to accept the frame, the most basic move available to any person in a media setting when they are handed a loaded question is to answer the question as asked and work within its assumptions. Shedeur did not do that. He questioned the premise before he ever addressed the substance. By asking what humbling means, he forced the reporter to define the term they were using as a weapon, which immediately exposed the intent behind the question. That is a tactical move executed under pressure with cameras rolling. That is not instinct. That is preparation. That is someone who has thought about exactly this kind of situation and decided in advance how they were going to handle it. The second layer is the philosophical layer. When Shedeur said, "I feel like I was the man. I do not let nobody else dictate how I feel about myself. If you allow that, then you are living for the wrong reasons." That is not a press conference answer. That is a philosophy. That is a framework for surviving in an environment that is actively working to diminish you. And he delivered it without notes, without a publicist in his ear, without any visible preparation. He delivered it because he has clearly internalized it at a level that goes well beyond talking points. Most people spend their entire adult lives trying to reach the level of self-definition that Shedeur articulated in a 30-second answer at a press conference in Cleveland. That is extraordinary, and it is being treated by the mainstream media as if it barely happened. The third layer is the emotional layer. Notice what was absent from everything Shedeur said in that press conference. There was no anger. There was no visible frustration. There was no moment where you could see the question landing and doing damage. He responded with warmth and with clarity, which is far more difficult than responding with defensiveness. Because when you respond with defensiveness, you confirm that the question found its target. When you respond with warmth and precision, you demonstrate that the question never found its target at all. Shedeur sat in that room and responded to attempts at diminishment with genuine enthusiasm for his situation. That is emotional discipline at a level that is genuinely rare, and it is worth naming clearly. The fourth layer is the strategic layer. By not giving the media the clip they were fishing for, Shedeur Sanders denied the narrative machine its raw material. He did not give them the confession. He did not give them the moment of public vulnerability. What he gave them instead was a young quarterback saying he feels bulletproof, saying he is thankful for everything that happened exactly the way it happened, saying he views his position as an opportunity to inspire. That is the footage that exists from that press conference. That is the record. And it is the exact opposite of what the establishment came into that room hoping to walk out with. We are going to talk about what that costs the narrative in a few minutes. But first, let us talk about why this moment did not come out of nowhere. What happened at that press conference is not an isolated incident. It is the latest chapter in a story that has been playing out since before Shedeur Sanders was ever drafted. And I want to document it carefully because the through line is undeniable when you lay it all out in sequence. Before the draft, the questions were about his attitude. Reports surfaced, and I want to be precise here. These were reports, largely sourced from anonymous evaluators that described Shedeur as difficult, as someone who needed to check his confidence. Let me be direct about what anonymous sourcing in a pre-draft evaluation context often means. It means people who have something to gain from a prospect's draft stock dropping are allowed to make claims without putting their name on them. It means the allegations carry weight without ever having to be substantiated. And those anonymous evaluations shaped the public conversation about Shedeur Sanders in the months leading up to the draft in a way that was never fully examined or challenged by the same outlets that amplified them. Then the character questions started. His relationship with his father, Deion Sanders, became a focal point in a way that no other quarterback prospect's family dynamics have been treated in recent memory. The coverage did not just examine the relationship. It dissected it. It speculated about dependency, about nepotism, about whether Shedeur could exist professionally without the infrastructure his father had built around him. Now, here is the question worth asking. When has a quarterback prospect's family background ever been subjected to that level of sustained, speculative scrutiny? The answer reveals something about why the scrutiny was applied here. Then draft night itself happened. Shedeur Sanders slid further than almost anyone had publicly projected. The moment became a national conversation not just about his draft position, but about his reaction to it, his composure during it, whether he looked appropriately humbled by it. The media wanted a specific face from him during that slide. And when the face they got was not what they expected, that became its own narrative. Then he landed in Cleveland and the coverage shifted again. The new frame became redemption, as though arriving in Cleveland was an act of grace being extended to him rather than a team making a football decision. And now, in the early weeks of his time with the new coaching staff, the humbling question gets asked explicitly. This is a pattern. The language changes at each stage: attitude concerns, character questions, draft slide, redemption narrative, public humbling. But the underlying project is the same at every stage. The project is framing Shedeur Sanders as someone who needed to be corrected by the process. And the reason that project keeps getting renewed is because Shedeur keeps refusing to confirm it. Every time the media writes the next chapter of the diminishment story, Shedeur Sanders responds by making their chapter impossible to use. And that is exactly what happened in that press conference room. Here is the part of this conversation that makes me genuinely uncomfortable in the best possible way to be uncomfortable, because it means we are getting close to something real. I want you to think about who else was in that press conference room when the humbling question got asked. There were other reporters. There were other cameras. There were people whose professional identity is built around covering the NFL with intelligence and accountability. And when a colleague used the word humbling to frame a young quarterback's rookie year in a question specifically engineered to produce a public moment of self-diminishment, nobody in that room said anything. Nobody asked why that framing was chosen. Nobody followed up with a question about the assumptions embedded in the word. Nobody pointed out that the same framing gets applied selectively. The room went along with it. And in going along with it, everyone who stayed silent became part of the architecture of the moment. This is something that does not get discussed clearly enough in conversations about sports media. The individual reporter who asks a loaded question is visible. The question gets scrutinized. But the ecosystem that normalizes that question, the editors who assign the coverage, the producers who clip the sound bites, the analysts who contextualize the answers on television the following morning, That ecosystem operates quietly. It operates through 1,000 small decisions about which clips get amplified and which ones get buried, about which moments get called out as inappropriate, and which ones get waved through as routine press conference content. And those small decisions collectively create the environment in which a reporter can walk into a room and ask a young black quarterback whether his entire rookie year was a humbling experience, and have it treated as a completely normal, completely acceptable, completely unremarkable thing to do. It is not normal. It is the product of an accumulated set of assumptions about who deserves the benefit of the doubt and who deserves the microscope. And the silence in that room when those assumptions went unchallenged is as loud and as revealing as the question itself. The establishment does not like being made uncomfortable by its own methods, and Shedeur Sanders just made the establishment very uncomfortable, which brings us to what that discomfort actually costs. Let us be very precise about the stakes of what happened in that press conference, because this is where the analysis gets genuinely important, and where the mainstream coverage has completely dropped the ball. The media went into that room with a specific content objective. They wanted a clip, not just any clip. They wanted a clip of Shedeur Sanders in his own words describing his rookie year in a way that validated the story they had been telling about him. Because here is the thing about the narrative machine. It runs most efficiently when its subjects participate in the construction of their own stories. When a player says, "Yeah, I needed to be humbled," that clip does permanent work. It gets pulled every time someone wants to argue that Shedeur was overconfident coming out of Colorado. It gets used as the foundational receipt for every negative take about his mentality. It becomes the moment the story calcifies. The moment where even his supporters have to acknowledge that, well, he admitted it himself. That clip does not exist. Instead, what exists is Shedeur Sanders saying he feels bulletproof. What exists is a young quarterback looking at the most difficult year of his professional life and calling it a gift. What exists is a press conference answer that will be shared by his supporters every single time someone brings up the humbling narrative, because it is the cleanest possible refutation of that narrative delivered by the person the narrative was built around. The media walked out of that room without what they needed, and that is not a small thing. That is a significant operational failure for the narrative machine, and it happened because Shedeur Sanders understood what was being attempted and refused to cooperate with it. Now think about what that moment gains him. Every young player watching that press conference, every parent who has seen their kid get publicly diminished by people with platforms, every person who has ever been in a room where the framing of a conversation was designed to minimize them, all of them saw a version of themselves in what Shedeur Sanders did in that room. He did not perform strength. He demonstrated it. There is a difference. Performance can be scripted and coached and rehearsed. What Shedeur showed in that room was something internal, something that comes from having done real, genuine, sustained work on understanding who you are, and who you are not going to let other people tell you that you are. That kind of authenticity builds something that no media narrative can touch. It builds trust. And in 2025, trust built in that way is the most valuable currency a young player can have. The establishment lost the clip, Shedeur gained the trust, and the scoreboard does not lie. All right, here is where we go on record. These 5 predictions are going to generate debate in the comments, and that is exactly the point, because the best debates are the ones built on specific, falsifiable claims that people can come back to and check. So here we go. Prediction number 1. The media's current framing of Shedeur Sanders as a cautionary tale, the quarterback whose confidence had to be corrected by the process, is going to collapse publicly before this season is over. I am not saying it is going to fade quietly. I am saying it is going to collapse in a way that is visible and documented, and that people will be able to point to specifically. Because the framing only holds as long as Shedeur Sanders is not producing in a way that makes the framing impossible to maintain. The moment he produces on the field in a way that cannot be explained away or minimized, Every outlet that spent months building the confidence as a character flaw narrative is going to have a very uncomfortable set of decisions to make about how they cover him going forward. And the audience will notice exactly how they handle it. Come back to the comments section of this video when it happens. I want to see what you said on day 1. Prediction number 2. Shedeur Sanders is going to have a defining on-field moment in the first half of this season that forces the entire conversation to shift from his attitude to his ability. Not a garbage time performance, not a mop-up situation at the end of a blow-away game. A real moment under real pressure, a throw he makes when it matters, a drive he executes when the game is in the balance, that produces a reaction from the league that cannot be contextualized away by the people who spent a year telling you he was not ready for this level. When that moment happens, this video is the receipt. Save it, share it, bring it back. Prediction number 3. The reporters who walked into that press conference with loaded questions are going to find themselves in an increasingly uncomfortable position as the season progresses, because the sound bite they were fishing for does not exist. What does exist is Shedeur Sanders on camera saying he feels bulletproof. And as the season develops and the narrative around him is forced to evolve, those reporters are going to be very quiet about the specific framing choices they made in that room. Watch the coverage over the next several weeks. Watch how the language around Shedeur Sanders shifts. Watch what gets emphasized and what gets buried. The repositioning is already beginning. The receipts for the original framing are already becoming inconvenient. That is not a coincidence. Prediction number 4. The full story of how Shedeur Sanders was treated during the pre-draft process, the anonymous evaluations, the character questions that were never substantiated, the narrative architecture that was built around him before he ever took a professional snap. That story is going to get told more completely and more formally than it has been told so far. The reporting is circling. The conversation is happening in spaces where the establishment cannot moderate or control it. And when the full picture comes out, the silence of the people who amplified the anonymous narratives without questioning their origins is going to be very difficult to explain. I'm not making definitive claims about timelines or sources. What I am saying is that the gap between what was said about Shedeur and what was actually substantiated is wide enough that closing it publicly is only a matter of time. Prediction number 5. By the time this season ends, Shedeur Sanders is one of the most talked about young quarterbacks in the entire NFL. Not because of the drama that surrounded his path to the league. Because of what he does once he is on the field in game situations. The college tape at Colorado speaks for itself in terms of what the physical and mental tools look like under pressure. The Jackson State record before that speaks for itself in terms of consistency and command. And the press conference we just broke down speaks for itself in terms of what the mental infrastructure looks like when someone is actively trying to get inside his head. Put those 3 things together, and you have a profile that should genuinely concern defensive coordinators. His ceiling, when you look at the full picture of evidence rather than the narrative that was constructed around him, is legitimately high. And the conversation about that ceiling is going to be unavoidable once the on-field evidence starts accumulating. Those are the 5 predictions, publicly stated, fully on record. If I am right, and I am telling you I am right, come back to this comment section and document it. If I am wrong, come back and roast me. I am not hiding from any of this. That is the only way this kind of analysis has any integrity. Here is what the press conference actually revealed when you strip away the surface level and look at what was really happening. A young quarterback who has been publicly questioned, anonymously criticized, and narratively framed as someone who needed to be corrected by the process, walked into a room where the media made one final attempt to get him to confirm that story on camera. And he refused, cleanly, warmly, precisely, without anger and without performance. He refused in a way that exposed the intent behind the question, denied the media the content they came to extract, and delivered a 30-second philosophy of self-definition that is going to live in the conversation around this player for years. And right now, after that press conference, after those questions, after every attempt to write his story for him, Shedeur Sanders is in that weight room. He is in that meeting room. He is on that practice field with Coach Ken Zampes and the rest of the Cleveland staff pushing him every single day. He is building something. He is doing exactly what he said he was going to do, in exactly the way he said he was going to do it. Bulletproof. The media tried to humble him. He checked it in real time. And the story of what happens next in Cleveland is going to be one of the most compelling quarterback narratives this league has produced in years. You do not want to be the person who slept on it. Before you leave this video, there are 3 things I need you to do, and I am serious about all 3 of them. First, drop your most honest take in the comments right now. Do you believe Shedeur Sanders is the most mentally equipped young quarterback in the NFL at this moment? Or do you think the confidence is still a legitimate concern at the professional level after 1 year? Pick a side. Be specific. Defend it. Because the best comment section debates are the ones where people are actually willing to commit to a position and explain why. I will be reading every single response. Second, write down prediction number 2 from this video right now. The defining on-field moment before the midpoint of the season. Bookmark this video. Come back when it happens. If I called it correctly, I want you here saying so. If I missed it completely, come back and let me have it. The only way predictions like these have value is if people hold them accountable. So hold me accountable. That is what the comment section is for. Third, tag the person in your life who has been saying that Shedeur Sanders needed the NFL to check his ego. Tag the person who told you the doubters had a point. Make them watch this video from the beginning. Make them sit through that clip of Shedeur saying he feels bulletproof in front of a room full of reporters who came there specifically to get the opposite. And then ask them with genuine curiosity, not with hostility, whether the story they believed about Shedeur Sanders was the story, or whether it was a story that was constructed around him by people who had already decided what the ending was supposed to be. That is the question this video was built around. And it is the question worth carrying into every conversation about Shedeur Sanders from this point forward. If you are not subscribed to Gridiron Ground yet, hit that button right now and turn on the bell, because the next video goes even deeper. We are breaking down the full offensive picture in Cleveland, what Coach Ken Zampes' track record actually means for a quarterback's development, and the one specific element of Shedeur's supporting cast that the coverage has almost completely ignored. It is a conversation worth having, and you do not want to miss where it goes. We're Gridiron Ground. See you in the comments.